Hey, permanent weight loss fam, Pete Weintraub here, and again, it's Thursday, noon, a little after noon Eastern time, sorry about that, and I just had to wolf something down really quick. I have to head to a client right after this. So today we're going to talk about a few different things. So BJ had a couple of questions that we're going to address, and then Lorraine had one as well. We're going to be talking nutrition, sleep, and nutrition tracking today. So let's start off with BJ's question. Let's put it up here. So BJ asks, proper sleep habits for weight loss, any optimal hours, etc. And then how much fruit is too much fruit? So let's start with sleep. So sleep is crucially important. And in fact, I recently found out about a guy. I've been reading his book, and obviously he's a scientist, a researcher, very knowledgeable guy. His name is Chris Kresser. And like I have with my permanent weight loss paradigm, where it's like a pyramid and there's 3 tiers, he actually has one in the physical realm. So for me, I got at the bottom mindset, then nutrition, then fitness. Those are the 3 tiers. If your mind's not right, it doesn't matter what you try to do physically. It's just not going to stick, and it's not going to be sustainable. But Chris Kresser has a paradigm of the 3 physical components. The thing at the bottom is nutrition still. So nutrition for weight loss, for optimal health, that is what's crucially important. But the second thing was sleep. So sleep in recent years has been found to be more pertinent to losing weight and being healthy than fitness. And fitness, again, has great physical benefits. It's great for your health. It improves circulation, functionality, flexibility, endurance, strength, you name it. But sleep is crucial because it helps our bodies to recover from any of the stresses we're under, whether physical or mental. And it's been linked again. People who sleep better tend to be able to keep their nutrition in check. People who get worse sleep tend to not do such a great job. They're more prone to making poor nutritional choices, often due to the fact that their hormones are so out of whack, their energy levels are so low that they're literally willing to eat or drink anything in order to stay awake and maintain some semblance of functionality. So, BJ, to answer your question, in terms of the amount of sleep needed, it really varies based upon the individual. I wish that wasn't the answer to just about any question asked about health, fitness, weight loss, you name it. But unfortunately, that's true too. Now, the good news is there's 3 different durations of time that seem to work best for most people. Now, the low end of the spectrum, so we're starting from the lowest, would be 6 hours of sleep. You want to always sleep in 90-minute intervals, unless you're taking a 20-minute power nap and you want to either take a long nap, it should be 90 minutes, or you want to sleep for a longer duration of time. Always aim for 90-minute intervals. So there's 3 90-minute intervals that you want to go for. Number 1 is 6 hours. So some people, I actually have a couple of family members and friends who function great on 6 hours. They're up until midnight, 1, 2 in the morning. They're able to wake up 6, 7, 8 in the morning, and they're fine. You know, they don't look tired. They don't feel tired. Their minds are working well. They're able to function optimally, and it doesn't seem to be an issue. So there are a good amount of people. I wouldn't say they're in the majority, but there are a large enough sample size of people in that range. So 6 hours would be the minimum that I would recommend. Where most people tend to fall is 7.5 hours. So that would be 6 hours plus 90 minutes, gives you 7.5 hours. This is where a lot of people fall for the most part. For me, I'm still feeling it out. I tend to aim for 7.5 hours during the work week. And the reason for that is my softball season just ended last night. We won the championship, hooray. But, you know, there were things I was doing later at night. So getting 9 hours of sleep before having to wake up at 5, 6, 7 in the morning for clients was unrealistic. So I would aim for 7.5 hours, and usually if I hit that and I slept well, I would be good. Then there's another 90-minute interval, adding 90 minutes to 7.5 hours, gives you exactly 9 hours of sleep. Now, this is what I usually get over the weekend, and this is what I seem to naturally be able to get. So sleep is an area that I'll admit to you guys, I recently learned about its significance in terms of keeping weight off and maintaining health. Now for me, since I've lost the weight, and obviously I teach a lot of people about that, I'm more focused now on improving my health in any way that I can. And sleep for pretty much the duration of my life has been an issue. I barely slept at all in college. I was either partying or cramming for a test or writing a paper all night, whatever. Same thing in high school, and even dating back to childhood. I remember I was always tired all the time, and thank God for coffee. So that's an area that I have to work on. But, BJ, in order to figure that out, either for yourself or for anybody watching here, I think it's important to try things out. So if you're getting 5 or 6 hours right now and it's not really cutting it, aim for 7.5 hours. See how that goes for you. If you're feeling great, then awesome. You want to try and be in bed about half an hour beforehand too. This is another tip. So if you're aiming for 7.5 hours, be in bed 8 hours before you want to wake up in the morning. That'll give you 30 minutes to fall asleep. I think the average person falls asleep in 20 to 25 minutes when their head hits the pillow. So always aim to be in bed half an hour beforehand, just as a precaution. But you might have to play around with it a bit. And like I said, I seem to be doing well during the week on 7.5 hours. I'm usually not too tired. When I get 6 or less, I'm a zombie. I'm non-functional. I'm not useful to myself or to anybody around me. So I always make sure that I'm getting a minimum of 7.5. And on weekends when I can sleep in a little later, I'll generally just let it happen. And what usually ends up happening is I'll wake up about 9 hours later. So my natural rhythm was probably 9 hours. I can do well on 7.5, and you might find the same for yourself. You might be the type of person where 6 hours during the week is fine. You can function. It's not really doing you too much damage. And then on the weekends, maybe you get 7.5, or maybe you're like me. Who knows? But you're probably going to have to take a week or two and kind of test it out. See where you're at now. If it's not sufficient and you feel it's not sufficient, try and go up. But always try to sleep at 90-minute intervals. Be in bed 30 minutes before you want to actually be asleep in order to get the 6, 7.5, or 9 hours, and go from there. As for the second part of your question, how much fruit is too much fruit? So we've gone over this a couple of times, but just to rehash for folks who may be new to the group, I look at fruit in terms of their rating on the glycemic index. There's also something called the glycemic load. Let's start with the glycemic index. The glycemic index is basically a scale from 0 to 100. 0 meaning that there's absolutely no sugar in the food whatsoever. 100 meaning that all it is sugar. And a lot of fruits fall in different places along the spectrum. Now, if you look up on Google what a low versus a high glycemic fruit is, or even what a moderate glycemic fruit is, it differs from what I think. I'm just using logic. A lot of people, for whatever the reason, think that a moderate is 55 to 75, low is anywhere from 0 to 55. That doesn't make any sense. If it's on a scale from 0 to 100, 0 to 49 should be considered low, 50 to 100 should be considered high. If you really want to go into a moderate range, which I don't recommend, I feel like it's black or white, then you can go probably 50 to 65 would be the moderate, and anything from 65 and up would be high. Anyway, you want to look at the glycemic index of any fruit you eat, and I recommend that you eat low glycemic fruits a vast majority of the time. So some of my favorite go-tos are apples, pears, oranges, any type of berry is good. Cherries are also good. So that's a bunch of different examples. It's probably a couple handfuls of examples if you add up all the berries in there as well. You can have high glycemic fruits at certain times. Now, and I think I talked about this last week, you can time high sugar foods. And I recommend if you're going to eat a high sugar food, that it's a natural food like a fruit. So for example, if you're going to be performing an intense workout that's going to be anywhere from 40 to 60 minutes in duration, then I'd recommend maybe having a banana or high glycemic fruit of some sort beforehand. And how do you find out if a fruit is high glycemic or low glycemic or what? Simply Google it. So again, 0 to 49 is good, 50 to 100, not so much. Now there's something that I've heard more and more about. I've known about it for years. I never really gave it much regard. but it does make sense in a way. And that is, there's something else called the glycemic load. Basically, what the glycemic load is and what differentiates it from the glycemic index is that it shows you how quickly or how slowly the sugar in the food that you're eating is released into your body. So for example, I believe a carrot, which has a glycemic index rating of 91, believe it or not, and I tell my clients they can eat carrots. I've been asked about carrots a million times in my career. But the reason that carrots are okay is because despite having a 91 glycemic index rating, they have a 1 glycemic load rating, meaning that it's processed very slowly throughout the body. So despite it having a lot of sugar, because of the fiber and because of the total net carbs, the glycemic load is actually very low. So that's something to consider too. There are some fruits that may be high glycemic, but if you look up their glycemic load, if it's considered low, then you might want to err in that direction as well. Personally, I like to keep things simple. Worrying about too many of these big names and big words can get very confusing to you and to anyone around you when you're trying to explain what it is that you're doing. So I just stick with the glycemic index and I stick with that rating. And if I really need to make a choice, and there aren't great options in front of me, then I'll make an educated decision based upon the glycemic index and glycemic load ratings of the fruits available in front of me, and I'll make the best decision based upon that. How much fruit is too much fruit? I think it depends on what you're looking to do. Obviously, for folks here looking to lose weight, it would just be best to stick with low glycemic fruits as often as possible. And if you really want to have a high glycemic one, I'd time it within 30 minutes or so before a workout. So BJ, I hope I answered your question. If I didn't, please let me know. And then we're going to move on to Lorraine. So Lorraine, first off, Lorraine, before we get into your question about nutrition tracking, I really want to commend you on opening up to the group earlier today. Obviously, you've been through a lot in the last few years. If you haven't seen it and you're watching this, I recommend you look at it, make her feel welcome. She's got a great head on her shoulders, and despite a lot of obstacles in recent years, she's got the best mindset you can possibly have. She's doing all the right things from a nutritional standpoint. She's changed her nutrition. She's made some tweaks to make it work well for her. And she's made her life a little bit easier so that she can continue to incorporate health in there. And she's hired a bunch of specialists down where she lives. I believe you said South Carolina. So again, thank you for sharing your story. It was very inspirational to me, and I hope that me answering your question, and I hope you stay involved with everyone in the group and you continue to help spread that, because it's great when the group leader can do it, but it's great to see too when members are able to as well. So pull up your question here. You want to talk about food diary use, and more specifically, is there a reason to use one, the benefits, and then you have this photo here of, I guess this is a paperback or something, some type of notebook to tabulate everything. So I am a big fan of nutritional tracking. I do it. I have all of my clients do it. I have all of my group members do it. And there's a reason for it, or there's a few reasons for it. Number one, accountability. When you're first starting out, whether you're just holding yourself accountable, or if you're using an app like I use with my clients, like MyFitnessPal, you can literally sync up with people, and you'll be able to, after adjusting your privacy settings, you'll be able to view their diaries. And that's what I do with my clients. And that way they know, A, they need to input their food. That's kind of like an accountability thing. It makes them think twice before putting something bad into their mouths. And secondarily, they have an accountability partner in me. I'm going to see it. And if they're not eating something good, they know they're going to hear about it. So I think from an accountability perspective, they're great. And then as you get more advanced with your nutrition, so I start my clients off very simply. Essentially, I give them the food guide, the recipe book, which all of you in the permanent weight loss community have access to. And we just start at phase one, cleaning up your nutrition and just noting the importance of tabulating it in either a diary like you have or in an app like MyFitnessPal. and just making that a constant. So again, every time you may make a bad decision, you got to think twice before you agree to input that in there. So I think that's crucially important. And then when you get more advanced, there are things you can do. For example, I have my clients when they're in that last home stretch and they're looking to lose those last 5 to 15 pounds. I have them look at their net carbs and their total carb percentage for the day. And an app like MyFitnessPal, I'm not sure, I only saw this one picture that you sent me, so I'm not sure what is included in your specific food diary, Lorraine, but I do know in apps like MyFitnessPal, by just simply inputting all the different foods and non-water beverages you drink throughout the day, it will actually calculate everything. Calculate carbs, fat, protein, fiber, net carbs, you name it. And keeping track of that is crucially important when you're in that last home stretch, because looking at your macronutrients and really seeing how many or how few carbs you're eating, that's crucially important to losing weight, especially during the end when things can really slow down from a weight loss perspective. So I think overall, it's a great thing. If you're not doing it right now and you're a member here in the permanent weight loss community, or you're listening to this on a YouTube video or a podcast, wherever you're ingesting this, I really highly recommend that you either buy a diary like Lorraine had here, or you get MyFitnessPal. Don't worry so much about the calories or any of the crap it tells you to. Just simply log your food that way, and do it as you're eating preferably. So that way you make sure that you're making a good decision. You have to think twice. And something I'd say, again, to pair up with that is to have an accountability partner. So whether you have a written document or you're using an app, allow someone to have access to that. It can be daily, it can be once a week, it could be a few times a week, whatever works best for you. But tell them what you're looking to do, really make sure they understand what you're looking to do nutritionally, and then have them hold you accountable. And that way, you're in the best shape possible to reach your goals, stay accountable, and continue to learn as you go. I hope you guys found this helpful. We'll be back next Thursday, so please, next time I ask for more questions, feel free to leave them. They can be like BJ at yes, multiples at a time, and that's great. I think that's awesome. That obviously shows that you want to learn. There are different things that have come up in your mind. Or you can ask, one question like Lorraine, which is also a great question, and like you saw, had different facets and components to it. So thanks again for watching. This is Pete Weintraub, running the permanent weight loss community. Obviously, we'll post more content later today. I hope you have a great rest of the week, and we'll talk to you next week.